Hello and welcome to the history of Babylon 5. Today's episode, the fifth and final part of the history of Jakar. And here we go. Over the next week, Jakar watched as the Army of Light slowly began to dissolve. Word came that Sheridan had perished in the thermonuclear attack on Zahadum, and the Shadows had completely withdrawn. The League members decided to withdraw their ships back to their respective states to bolster their own defenses. Jakar, Delin, and Commander Ivanova were unsuccessful in persuading them to remain. Feeling useless, Jakar decided to seek out Michael Garibaldi, still missing when his Star Fury vanished, seeing Garibaldi as the only non-Narn friend he truly had. Jakar felt obliged to find out what had happened to him. Jakar was able to track down Garibaldi's Star Fury, which had been picked up and sold as salvage by a human trader. He found the trader on a small, remote human colony. The scavenger, however, refused to speak to Jakar, and a bar fight broke out. Jakar was assisted by Marcus Cole, a ranger, who had pursued Jakar, figuring he would need some backup. The two fought their way out of the bar and found a hiding place. Marcus sought out the trader on his own, and managed to get a name, which he brought back to Jakar. While grateful, Jakar explained to Marcus that his search is a personal one and would prefer to do it on his own. Marcus reluctantly leaves Jakar behind and returns to Babylon 5. After Marcus left, Centauri guards find Jakar's hiding place as he sleeps. He tries to fight, but is shot with a stun gun and captured. He is then brought to Centauri Prime in chains, dragged before Emperor Cartagia in the royal palace, and presented as a gift to Londo Mollari, now the Minister of Planetary Security. Jakar's only concern is to ask if they know where Garibaldi might be, but neither Cartagia nor Mollari have any idea. Later that day, Jakar rests, chained up in his small holding cell after a brutal torture session. Mollari comes to visit him. Mollari explains to Jakar in detail how he will continue to be tortured and eventually killed, and that he would never have wished this upon his enemy. Mollari then explains that Cartagia is mad, and that he needs Jakar's help in removing him. Jakar recognizes how desperate Mollari is, and issues the price for his help. His world must be set free. Mollari promises to make it happen. Despite giving Jakar to Mollari, Cartagia still sees fit to amuse himself by torturing Jakar. His amusement turns to frustration, however, when Jakar refuses to scream in pain. During one session, Cartagia is so angered he considers cutting off both Jakar's hands, but the Narn passes out before he can order the plan. While Jakar enjoys a brief respite from the torture, Mollari comes to him again, telling him that if he does not cry out, the Emperor will have him killed. Jakar, still clinging to his pride, tells Mollari this is one thing he cannot be made to do. Mollari reminds him that if he dies, there is no hope for his people's freedom. In the next session, Cartagia has Jakar tied to a post to receive lashes from a special whip known as the Electro-whip. The pain increases with each lash, and Cartagia explains that it will only end when Jakar screams, or the total reaches 40, which would be enough to kill him. Cartagia forces Mollari to watch. Jakar endures to the 39th stroke before crying out in anguish. And we'll be right back after this. Despite knowing it had to happen, the blow to Jakar's mentality is a strong one. He glares at Cartagia silently as the Emperor has him removed from his cell, and prepares to board a ship. Mollari has convinced Cartagia to have Jakar's trial on the Narn homeworld itself. The Emperor is so unsettled by it that he asks Mollari for advice on how to deal with it. Preoccupied with his plans to assassinate Cartagia, Mollari unthinkingly tells him to do what he thinks is best. As a result, the Emperor orders one of his guards to pluck out one of Jakar's eyes, not caring initially, but choosing the left at the last minute. After arriving on Narn, Mollari visits Jakar in his cell, and is shocked to find that the Narn's left eye has been plucked out. Jakar tells Mollari that he sees things more clearly now, and that the Centauri's heart is empty. Mollari ignores Jakar's statement and explains that the Narn is to be paraded through the streets of the capital, and then into the palace, and before Cartagia. Mollari tells Jakar that everything is in place, and that he needs only break his chains, which have been weakened, and create enough of a disturbance for Malari and his agents to assassinate Cartagia unhampered. He warns that if G'Kar touches the Emperor, then Narn will never be free. Unknown to either G'Kar or Malari, the Emperor has ordered G'Kar's weakened chains replaced. Despite this, despite having been beaten, tortured, starved, and made to carry a heavy beam across the city, G'Kar finds the strength to break the chains. Other Narns have been brought to the palace to witness his trial, and they join him in creating a necessary distraction. Cartagia dies in what looks like a fatal heart attack. Malari convinces what is left of the royal court that they should take it as a sign from the gods to abandon Narn. The other nobles agree, feeling that there is nothing there but ruins anyways. The Centauri announce that they will be withdrawing and begin to evacuate. Word sweeps across the planet. As the Centauri abandon the palace, a group of young Narns begin tearing up the throne in celebration. G'Kar wanders in and questions them. They tell him that they want him to be their next ruler and lead them in glorious revenge against the Centauri. G'Kar refuses to become a dictator and tells them that they have to let go of their desire for revenge. One of the Narns, Jalorn, calls him a coward, asking what he had endured during the occupation. G'Kar, blind in one eye and still covered in his injuries, merely walks out, caught between laughter and tears. Soon thereafterwards, Captain Sheridan, seemingly returned from the dead, manages to bring about the end of the Second Shadow War, following the Battle of Coriana 6. Presumably at this time, the Kha'Ri is reinstated, at least in a basic manner, and G'Kar assumes his former place among them. G'Kar returns to Babylon 5 shortly thereafter, with the Shadow War over and the ancient enemy gone forever, along with the Vorlons and the rest of the first ones. Dr. Franklin treats G'Kar's eye, replacing it with a prosthetic one that can operate outside the body, amusing G'Kar greatly. Malari soon arrives on the station. Having been appointed Prime Minister, Malari decides that he wanted some distance from the capital, as many of Cartagia's supporters or other enemies of his might still be about. Leaving Centauri Prime in the care of the regent, G'Kar confronts him coldly, telling him that now that Narn is free, Malari no longer exists in his world. G'Kar cannot so easily avoid Malari completely, however. A month or two after the war is over, Captain Sheridan invites both men to a meeting. He explains about a few recent attacks by a mysterious race called the Drakh. Sheridan wants to keep all the races cooperating and working together, and asks G'Kar and Malari to allow the Rangers to patrol their respective borders with the White Star Fleet. G'Kar is reluctant at first, but eventually agrees. In September 2261, Sheridan calls for an emergency session of the Council and the League to discuss the status of the Earth Alliance Civil War. With President Clark completely out of control, Sheridan and his allies have decided to strike back and liberate their home. Sheridan asks the Centauri, Narn, and the other races that might have mutual defense treaties with Earth to suspend them for the duration of the Civil War. G'Kar enthusiastically supports Sheridan's request, and all others present unanimously agree. Malari decides to take it a step further. He meets with G'Kar in his quarters. Despite the cool reception he receives, Malari candidly tells his one-time enemy that he no longer wishes to be trapped in the same old cycle. He wants to build something better. Recalling the drink that G'Kar brought him just before the Narn-Centauri War, Malari offers G'Kar a drink and proposes that they shift from neutral party to rendering a more active assistance to Sheridan. G'Kar says nothing, only turns down the drink, making Malari leave feeling disappointed. A few hours later, however, G'Kar meets him in the Zocalo, and does have a drink. He agrees to Malari's proposal, but insists his name not be on the same page as Malari when it's signed. When the Earth Alliance Civil War ends, G'Kar, along with the members of the League of Non-Aligned Worlds, agreed to the formation of a new interstellar alliance. G'Kar and the other League representatives travel to Earth to address the government and there offer them a chance to join the new organization. G'Kar himself speaks at a press conference alongside interim Earth President. G'Kar and Malari are both present at the wedding of Sheridan and Delenn, and after the ceremony share a drink. During this, Malari asks G'Kar how he feels about making history, to which G'Kar responds that you cannot hope to make history. You can only hope to survive it. Back on Babylon 5, G'Kar continues to function as a diplomatic representative for the Narn, while serving on the advisory board for the Alliance. He makes many contributions to the Alliance formation, including the Presidential Oath of Office and the Declaration of Principles. When Malari is fighting for his life in MedLab after suffering a heart attack, G'Kar makes the surprising move of joining Cato as he keeps vigil at Malari's bedside, after Malari awakens to apologize profoundly to G'Kar, something he had never done before in all of his life. G'Kar is moved, but offers no response. And we'll be right back after this. During this time, G'Kar and Malari unconsciously draw close together, despite their occasional barb exchange. For example, when the two take shelter together while Babylon 5 repels an attack from an unknown alien force, they share some intimate details about their respective childhoods. In 2262, Delenn asks G'Kar to act as a bodyguard for Londo Malari when Malari returns to his homeworld to prepare for the position of Emperor. She requested this not only to protect Malari from the scheming nobles of the royal court, but also to serve as an important symbol that the two races that had once so hated each other could work together. But what really makes G'Kar agree to the idea is the anticipation of seeing the shocked reaction of the Centauri nobility at seeing a Narn in their midst. Despite outward prejudice from the members of the royal court, G'Kar stays at Malari's side consistently on Centauri Prime, even sleeping in his room at the foot of his bed. Indeed, G'Kar proves to be an able bodyguard, saving Malari at least once. While there, G'Kar was presented with the Electro-whip that was used on him along with the guard who wielded it, courtesy of Minister Vol, an enemy of Malari's. Possibly to embarrass Malari, Mol invites G'Kar to freely use the Electro-whip to avenge himself on the guard. But the Narn surprises everyone and impresses some when he declines the offer, stating that the guard was only acting on the orders of Cartagia, who is now dead. Later, while he and Malari examine reports of increased military spending by the Centauri government, although they are not officially at war, G'Kar stops to wonder why fresh spoo, which can only be eaten by his own kind, is being sent to the unused underground cells of the royal palace. He discovers that his former diplomatic aide and friend Natoth is still alive after having been assumed dead during the Narn-Centauri War, is being held prisoner there. In short order, G'Kar and Malari smuggle her out of the palace, disguised as a veiled Centauri noblewoman, and eventually transfer her to a Narn ship, on their way back to Babylon 5. After the pair arrive on the station, G'Kar receives a new artificial eye that is in the proper color. He also learns that the book of religious observations that he had been writing had been taken from his quarter by Talon, and subsequently published, much to G'Kar's surprise. As months pass, G'Kar becomes a spiritual figure, with many Narns coming to him for guidance. Although uncomfortable in this role, he does his best to help those around him understand his message of unity. G'Kar again becomes a bodyguard when Malari returns to Centauri Prime to investigate Centauri attacks on Alliance shipping lanes. Delenn warns G'Kar that the Alliance blockade and boycott of Centauri ships would soon develop into war, and that if G'Kar ran into trouble, no one would be sent to help him. Regardless of Delenn's concerns, G'Kar leaves. Once he is on the Centauri homeworld, G'Kar is quickly locked in a cell over Malari's objections. Malari goes so far as to have himself incarcerated with G'Kar, as repayment for his loyal service and testament to their fledgling friendship. G'Kar is injured when Centauri Prime comes under global bombardment, but is saved by Malari much to his surprise. Just before Malari is to have a Drakh Keeper attached to him and become Centauri Emperor, G'Kar forgives him for his past deeds and bids him goodbye. G'Kar's spiritual following continues to grow. His seemingly miraculous survival on Centauri Prime threatens to turn the movement into a full-scale cult of personality. Even the Kha'Ri are swept up, demanding that he return to Narn for his blessing or more. Horrified by these developments, G'Kar realizes that he needs to put some distance between himself and the mythos that is building around him. At the same time, Lyta Alexander is captured for financial terrorist activities on behalf of the Telepath Resistance. This and her increasing powers have made her a greater threat the longer she remains on board Babylon 5. As G'Kar prepares to leave, he offers to take Alexander with him as a traveling companion, believing that he can help Alexander heal her anger and encourage her to move on to something better. She eventually accepts, and he arranges to have Talon take over his duties as Narn representative on Babylon 5. And we'll be right back after this. G'Kar and Alexander eventually part ways, and G'Kar returns to Alliance space. G'Kar's exact duties within the Alliance during these years are not known. It is known that he helps a group of Rangers with a rescue mission and participates in a diplomatic conference at Babylon 5. In 2271, on a visit to Babylon 5, G'Kar learns that Stephen Franklin is there purchasing a small explorer vessel, with the intent of exploring worlds out on the rim. Not one to miss an opportunity to venture into the unknown, G'Kar invites himself along as Franklin's traveling companion. In 2275, G'Kar is on Centauri Prime using a changeling net to disguise his appearance. When at a public address attended by Emperor Malari and Prime Minister Durla, he foils an attempt on the Prime Minister's life. To save him from being executed as an off-world spy, and in gratitude for saving Durla's life, G'Kar is made a guest of the royal palace. In December 2278, on the last day of his life, Malari reveals the keeper on his neck to G'Kar and his plan to free Sheridan and Delenn. At Malari's request, G'Kar attempts to kill him as an act of mercy. After Sheridan and Delenn are escorted to an awaiting ship by a guard, Malari asks, "Are you there, my old friend?" G'Kar emerges from the shadows. The two exchange a few words, and then G'Kar begins to strangle Malari. Malari's sleeping keeper awakens and forces the elderly emperor to choke G'Kar. Both die at each other's hands. After the Centauri Republic is liberated from the Drakh, Cato, having succeeded Malari as emperor, has two large gold statues of Malari and G'Kar placed at the gates of the capital city, positioned so as they appear to be watching each other's backs. In 2281, as Sheridan's life draws to a close, he and Delenn hold one last private dinner with Cato, Franklin, Garibaldi, and Ivanova, as they toast the memories of those from their days on Babylon 5 who have passed away. Garibaldi names G'Kar. Thank you for watching the history of Babylon 5. This concludes the history of G'Kar. Special thanks to the Babylon Project and all contributors for all information you heard today. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you can. If you have, thank you. And have a nice day. Bye-bye.